First Discourse, Appearance of Comte de Gabalis. He begins to instruct the author in the mysteries of the Kabbalah. May the soul of the Comte de Gabalis be now in the presence of God, for they have written me that he has died of apoplexy. The amateurs will not fail to say that this manner of death usually befalls those who deal incautiously with the secrets of the sages, and that since the blessed Raymond Lully so decreed in his testament, an avenging angel has never failed promptly to wring the necks of all who have indiscreetly revealed the philosophic mysteries. But let them not condemn this learned man thus hastily, without having received an explanation of his conduct. He revealed all to me, it is true, but he did so only with the utmost Kabbalistic circumspection. It is necessary to pay his memory the tribute of stating that he was a great zealot for the religion of his father, the philosophers, and he would rather have gone through fire than have profaned its sanctity by taking into his confidence any unworthy prince, or ambitious or immoral man. Three types of persons excommunicated for all time by the sages. Happily I am not a prince. I have but little ambition, and you will presently see that I have even a trifle more chastity than is requisite for a philosopher. He found me to be a tractable, inquiring, and fearless disposition. A dash of melancholy is lacking in me, else I would make all who are inclined to blame the Comte de Gabalis for having concealed nothing from me confess that I was not unfit subject for the occult sciences. One cannot make great progress in them, it is true, without melancholy, but the little that I possess in no wise disheartened him. You have, he told me 100 times, Saturn in an angle in his own house, and retrograde. Some day you cannot fail to be as melancholy as a sage ought to be, for the wisest of all men, as we learn in the Kabbalah, have like you Jupiter in the ascendant. Nevertheless, so powerful was the influence of his Saturn, though far weaker than yours, that one cannot find proof of his having laughed a single time in all his life. The amateurs must, therefore, find fault with my Saturn, and not with the Comte de Gabalis, if I prefer to divulge their secrets rather than to practice them. If the stars do not do their duty, the Comte is not to blame for it. And if I have not sufficient greatness of soul to strive to become the master of nature, overthrow the elements, hold communion with supreme intelligence, command demons, become the father of giants, create new worlds, speak with God upon his formidable throne, and compel the cherubim who guards the gate of terrestrial paradise to let me stroll now and then in its alleys, it is I, and I alone, who am to blame or to be pitied. One must not, on his account, insult the memory of that rare man by saying that he met his death because he taught me all these things. Since the fortunes of war are uncertain, is it not possible that the Comte may have been overcome in an encounter with some unruly hobgoblin? Peradventure, while talking with God upon his flaming throne, he could not keep his glance from straying to his face. Now it is written that man may not behold God and live. Perhaps he merely pretended to die, as is the way of philosophers, who feign death in one place only to transplant themselves to another. Be that as it may, I cannot believe that the manner in which he entrusted his treasures to me merits punishment. This is what took place. A common sense has always made me suspect the existence of much claptrap in all the so-called occult sciences. I have never been tempted to waste time in perusing books which treat of them. Nevertheless, it does not seem quite rational to condemn, without knowing why, all those who are addicted to these sciences, persons often perfectly sane otherwise, and for the most part scholars distinguished at the law and in society. Hence, to avoid being unjust, and in order not to fatigue myself with tedious reading, I determined to pretend to all whom I could learn were interested in occultism that I was infatuated with it. From the outset I had greater success than I had even dared hope, since all these gentlemen, however mysterious and reserved they may pride themselves upon being, ask nothing better than to parade their theories in the new discoveries they pretend to have made in nature. It was not long before I became the confidant of the most important among them, and I had always some one or another of them in my study, which I had purposely furnished forth with the works of their fantastic authors. Without exception, there was no foreign scholar upon whom I did not have an opinion. In short, as regarded the science in question, I soon found myself a personage of importance. I had as companions princes, men of lofty rank, lawyers, beautiful ladies, and ugly ones as well, doctors, prelates, monks, nuns, in fact, people from every walk of life. Some were seeking angels, others the devil, some their guardian spirit, others evil spirits, some a panacea for every ill, others knowledge of the stars, some of the secrets of divinity, and almost all the philosopher's stone. They were to a man agreed that these mighty secrets, and especially the philosopher's stone, are hard to find and that few people possess them, but all entertained a sufficiently good opinion of themselves to fancy that they were of the number of the elect. Happily, the most advanced were at that time expecting with impatience the arrival of a German, a nobleman of high rank and a great Gabalist, whose lands lie toward the frontiers of Poland. He had written to the children of the philosophers at Paris, promising to pay them a visit when passing through France on his way to England. I was commissioned to answer this great man's letter. I sent him the map of my horoscope that he might judge whether I should aspire to the supreme wisdom. Fortunately, my map and letter caused him to do me the honor of replying that I should be one of the first persons whom he would see in Paris, and that, heaven willing, it would not be his fault if I did not enter the society of the sages. To my joy, I kept up a regular correspondence with the illustrious German. From time to time I propounded to him weighty and so far in me lay well-reasoned problems concerning the harmony of the world, the numbers of Pythagoras, the visions of St. John, and the first chapter of Genesis. The profundity of these subjects enraptured him. He wrote me unheard-of wonders, and I soon recognized that I was dealing with a man of very vigorous and very vast imagination. I have 3 or 4 score of his letters written in so extraordinary a style that I could never bring myself to read anything else the moment I was alone in my study. One day, as I was marveling at one of the most sublime of these letters, a very good-looking man came in and, bowing gravely to me, said in French, but with a foreign accent, "Adore, O my son, adore the very good and the very great God of the sages, and never allow yourself to become puffed up with pride because he sends one of the children of wisdom to initiate you into their order, and to make you a share in the wonders of his omnipotence." The novelty of the salutation startled me, and for the first time in my life, I began to question whether people may not sometimes see apparitions. Nevertheless, collecting myself as best I could, and looking at him as politely as my slight fear permitted, I said, "Whoever you may be whose greeting is not of this world, your visit does me great honor. But before I adore the God of the sages, may it please you to let me know to what sage and to what God you refer. And if agreeable to you, pray take this armchair, and have the kindness to enlighten me as to this God, these sages, this order, and before or after all of this, as to the manner of being to whom I have the honor of speaking." "You receive me very sagely, sir," he replied with a smile, taking the proffered armchair. "You ask me to explain to you in the beginning certain things, which with your permission I shall not touch upon today. The words of the compliment I have paid you the sages address at the outset to those to whom they have determined to open their hearts and reveal their mysteries. From the letters I had judged you so advanced that this salutation would not be unknown to you, and that you would esteem it the most gratifying compliment of Comte Gabalis would pay you." "Ah, sir," I exclaimed, recollecting that I had a great role to play, "how shall I render myself worthy of such kindness? Is it possible that the greatest of all men is in my study, and that the renowned Gabalis honors me with a visit?" "I am the least of the sages," he answered gravely, "and God, who dispenses the light of the wisdom together with its responsibility in that measure which his sovereignty deems best, has bestowed upon me but a very small portion of the light, in comparison to that at which I marvel in my fellow initiates. I expect you to equal them some day, if I dare judge from the map of your horoscope with which you have honored me. But why, sir," he added mirthfully, "are you doing your utmost to get into my bad graces by mistaking me at first sight for a phantom?" "Ah, not for a phantom," I said, "but I confess, sir, that I suddenly recalled the story of Cardan. He says his father was one day visited in his study by 7 unknown beings, clothed in different colors, who made rather strange statements to him as to their nature and occupation." "Well, I am familiar with that incident to which you refer," interrupted the Comte. "They were sylphs. I will tell you about them one day. They are a kind of ethereal being, and now and then they come to consult the sages about the books of Averroes, which they do not understand very well. Cardan is a rattle-pate to have published that in his subtitles. He found the reminiscence among his father's papers. His father was one of us. Realizing that his son was a born babbler, he did not wish to teach him anything of moment, and let him amuse himself with ordinary astrology, whereof he knew only enough to forecast that his son would be hung. So that rascal is to blame for your having insulted me by taking me for a sylph. Insulted you, I exclaimed. What have I done that I should be so unfortunate? I am not angry with you, he interposed. You are under no obligation to know that all these elementary spirits are our disciples, that they are only too happy when we condescend to instruct them, and that the least of our sages is more learned and more powerful than all these little fellows. We will speak of these matters, however, at another time. It is enough today that I have had the satisfaction of seeing you. Strive to render yourself worthy to receive the Kabbalistic light, my son. The hour of your regeneration is at hand. It rests solely with you to become a new being. Pray ardently to him who alone has the power to create new hearts, that he may give you one capable of the great things which I am to teach you, and that he may inspire me to withhold from you none of our mysteries. Then he arose, kissed me solemnly, and without giving me a chance to reply said, Adieu, my son. I must see the members of our order, who are in Paris. Afterward I shall give you my news. Meanwhile, watch, pray, hope, and be silent. With these words he left my study. On the way to the door I expressed my regret at the shortness of his visit, and at his cruelty in forsaking me so soon after he had shown me a spark of his light. But assuring me with very great kindness that I would lose nothing by waiting, he entered his coach and left me in a state of amazement which beggars description. I could not believe neither my eyes nor my ears. I am sure, I kept saying to myself, that this is a man of exalted rank, that he has inherited a yearly income of 50,000 pounds. Moreover, he appears to be a person of great accomplishment. Can it be that he has lost his head over these occult follies? He talked to me about those sylphs in an exceedingly cavalier fashion. Is it not possible that there may be a sorcerer, and may I not have been altogether mistaken in believing, as I hitherto have, that sorcerers no longer exist? On the other hand, if he is a sorcerer, are they as devout as he seems to be? I could not solve this riddle, nevertheless I determined to see the matter through to the end, although I fully realized that I should have to put up with not a few sermons, and that the demon tormenting him was a highly moral and pious character. End of discourse.